With Democrats in charge of the Senate and Republicans getting ready to take hold of the House, congressional gridlock seems all but certain. Our next guest says, though, Republicans and Democrats will still be able to get some work done, including the work needed to extend the Bush tax cuts. Dan Clifton is the head of policy research at Strategas, and he joins us now live from Washington. Dan, we mentioned the Bush tax cuts. What are going to be the biggest priorities for the new government going forward?
Sure. We think that the Bush tax cuts will get done in the next 30 days, so before the new Congress gets sworn in. Then when the new Congress gets sworn in, we're going to have a combination of the Republicans trying to pass legislation that they think is important and Obama putting out a whole new set of priorities. And I think one area of compromise that is being completely underestimated right now is the ability to do trade agreements with both Korea and Colombia. And this would allow U.S. exports, opening up new markets for U.S. exports and American goods. And I think that's something that can get done in a very gridlocked environment.
Are lawmakers underestimating the potential for growth for the economy from those free trade agreements?
Well, that's right. I would say that that is the case itself. We obviously have some issues where in an environment with a 9% unemployment rate, we've been seeing some growing protectionism among members of Congress. So I do believe that investors are somewhat underestimating the ability for Obama to try and get new exports out there as a way to get U.S. economic growth going. And I think that's one area of compromise.
You noted in your note that we've seen voters remove the ruling party in 3 straight elections now. So quite a bit of volatility. What is the impact on policy when you have this turnover every 2 years?
Well, that's absolutely right, is that we have not seen the electorate this volatile since the late 1940s, early 1950s. And just because we had an anti-incumbent election now does not mean that we're not going to have another one in 2012. And so that means that members have to prioritize growth over anything else. The Republicans are saying that the voters are saying to cut spending. I'm not really sure that that was the exact message of this election, but you'll see Republicans trying to limit spending. The House will probably vote on a measure to repeal health care. It won't go anywhere in the Senate, but that's what members of Congress are trying to translate. They're looking at what they saw from this election and translate it out into larger policy initiatives. In a Republican House and a Democratic Congress, not much will actually get done in terms of what the president can sign into law, but you'll see them messaging ahead of 2012 election to prevent another wipeout like happened in 2010.
Right. You mentioned health care. That package, of course, has passed, so regulators will really have more influence in shaping policy than Congress would. So given that, would President Obama be able to achieve what he wants through regulators as opposed to through lawmakers?
You know, that's a very good question. One of the things that we try and do ahead of the election is understand what industries are going to benefit and what industries are going to get hurt. And this year was the toughest year to do that, largely because, as you referenced, healthcare is at the regulators, financial regulations at the regulators, and energy is at the regulators. And that has set up a process where Obama can actually use the regulatory process to his benefit and achieve his policy goals. The one thing I would say is that with more Republicans in Congress, particularly in controlling the House, they can use that oversight to kind of put pressure on the Obama administration in what they're moving in on the regulatory. But I think a lot of the real policy action is going to come on the regulatory side and less so on the legislative side.
All right. Thank you so much. So bottom line here, gridlock ahead. We've been speaking with